Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Kline, co-founder and CEO, along with my husband and company visionary, Devan Kline.
And together, with our amazing team, we are going to help you push past your limits, not just physically in our gyms, but right here, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the Burn Bootcamp podcast.
Together, we will take on challenges and break through barriers to transform into the best possible version of ourselves. We are more than a gym. We are a community. Your community. Let's go, Burn Nation.
Hey, Burn Nation. Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. My name is Devan Kline, and I am the co-founder and visionary, as well as a host for you here on the Burn Bootcamp podcast. And today we have a very, very special interview. I got one of my buddies, franchise partners, good friends, Brian Woodell, here with us. Brian is actually one of the 14 stories from Burn Nation, franchise partners, members, trainers that are in our brand new Burn book, the 5-Step Strategy for Inner and Outer Strength. And, we really scoured the organization to find different stories, but also really deep, emotionally driven stories that can be a reflection of some of the issues, problems, obstacles that we have as human beings going through life, and then how fitness, how burn, and how health and wellness can really play an integral part of that journey. And so Brian is one of the 14 stories in the book from the North Suffolk, Virginia location, where he is a beast on the mic, as well as behind the scenes operationally with over 450 members, one of the most successful gyms in Virginia. So congratulations to you, my friend. And he's trained over 1,000 camps since the inception at North Suffolk. So that's a lot of sweat, probably a lot of tears, probably a little bit of blood in there as well, every now and then.
A lot of learning.
And, he is coming here today to elaborate on the story that he shares in the book. And this is one of former alcoholism. And so many of us know someone or ourselves have had to experience this firsthand. Myself, I experienced this growing up with my father. And, most people don't take it upon themselves to make a change and pivot into their life and use alcoholism as a lesson learned. And most people stick with, being an alcoholic or alcoholism until it ultimately, like my father, ends up becoming their demise. And Brian just has such an incredible story, you guys. I was so gripped and pulled in by this man when we first met. Obviously, alcoholism runs deep in my family, and I've seen a lot of tragedy from that. And he told me his story and showed me how many days. This was back when we met in the South Riding gym. You pulled out your phone and you showed me the running list of how many days that you have made the decision to be sober. On May 5th, 2019, that was day one of Brian's sobriety. May 4th, 2019 was his last drink. I'm going to let him tell the story, but it's almost his 5-year anniversary coming up on May 5th. And today he is 1,820 days sober, and every single day reminds himself by putting it in his iPhone notes and celebrating the milestones. Brian, we thank you for being a huge part of Burn Bootcamp Nation, for being so vulnerable and coming to share your story here. We were talking offline about how many people deal or get trapped into alcoholism and how rampant it really is, and how many people have to suffer through this. And I hope your story today inspires people to take a second look, an inside look in the mirror. I hope it inspires people to make change in their life, whether it's with a substance or whether it's another change that we know that we need to make that we haven't pulled the trigger on. Brian's story, I hope, really lights a fire under you out there, Burn Nation, to be honest with yourself, be vulnerable with yourself, and ultimately control your own destiny, control your own life. Brian Woodell, dude, thank you for being here so much.
It's such a pleasure. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to come in and talk about this. I love the opportunity to talk about this and the platform that I've been given. I'm thankful that I have really no shame and guilt about this problem that I had, and I'm thankful for the progress that's been made in the tackling it every single day with brand new vigilance and just really grateful. That's the best thing I can say is I'm thankful and have an attitude of gratitude every single day.
I love many, many things about you, but one of the things that I love is how intentional you are about reminding yourself that this is a issue that you got to pay attention to every day. You can't just quit one day and then forget it. You're reminding yourself of this every day through the notes on your iPhone. So talk to me about what that means to you and how that process has gone.
Yeah, it's strange how it started. I didn't give it a lot of thought in the moment, but I just started doing it, and it just snowballed from there. But and now it's like a ritual. It's every single day. I do it that morning, and it's really interesting because it's planning that day. It's that intentional note where I write it down and say, today is 1700, today is 1701. I'm not going to drink that day. And so I'm putting it out there, and I'm making plans not to drink. And then when the next day happens, another day, I'm not going to drink. And I look back and I say, I didn't drink yesterday. I'm not drinking today. And I'm just stacking them on top of each other every single day. And it's a long list now. It takes me a little while to get all the way down to that next day. But I'm so thankful. And when I look back, and see that number of days and see year after year, I'm really proud. I'm really proud of the progress, but I'm also very vigilant in making sure that I don't have a slip up. I'm right there.
It sounds to me that before we go to some of your quotes in the book, that you really have this healthy fear, right? Like, to me, as you do that process every morning and you remind yourself that, like, today is going to be a day where I plan not to have a drink and I plan to string together another day. It sounds like you're taking it one day at a time because you have such a healthy fear and almost in a weird way, a respect at the type of damage that alcoholism can cause in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody who has really addressed the problem, if they've gone to AA and things, there's a lot of things that are talked about in AA. And one of the things that they talk about with alcohol is it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And they talk about it being a subtle foe. And one of the other things that we talk about is that while you're in the AA meeting or something like that, the addiction or the sickness is out there in the parking lot doing push-ups. And there's this visual that comes with that, where it's always there. It's ready to sort of pounce on you. And so with that, I have to take it very seriously. I can't race past how important it is to stay vigilant and to take one day at a time and know that it is something that can easily slip back into your life if you're not paying attention and not being vigilant. So this helps me remind myself every day that it's the stakes are too high and the consequences are too great to go back to that lifestyle.
And we're going to dive deep into your story. And I want you to just bring out everything that you can for us, because we know, you and I both know, how baffling and powerful alcohol actually is, and how some people, if not most people that do suffer from alcoholism, they try to keep it a secret. And there's a real vulnerability that you have to come forward and admit it to yourself, but also to get help like you have. And so we'll come back to your story and we'll talk about AA and your experience through all of that. But before we do that, I wanted to just take a moment to just read a passage from the book. And I think this will set you up to really tell your story and to really go deep. How you got there, where it started, how it progressed, whether it was quickly or whether it was slowly, what was the peak moment, and kind of what you have done, what strategies that you did. I really want this to be a strategy-driven podcast for people. And so we can weave some of those things in your story. So Brian will be featured in his story in chapter 1. There are 5 strategies that make up the 5-step strategy to our book here. And it's burn, believe, nourish, achieve, and connect. Those are the 5 Burn Bootcamp pillars. And, Brian really turned to Burn Bootcamp and fitness as a way to fill the void of alcohol. And so that's one of the reasons. And he says right here in the book, it says, we've seen this happen so many times, throughout our lives or in our families. And Brian from our North Suffolk, Virginia location is an amazing example of overcoming Brian would race in from, long days at the office as a financial professional and just instinctually head to the fridge, to the wine rack, open a bottle of some sorts, and drinking helped transition him from the work to the evening. And he'd often pour, seconds and thirds. And for years, the habit was harmless, or so it seemed. And Brian quotes, "I'd forget stretches of my day. And there were times where I shouldn't have gotten behind the wheel, but I did. My emotional and physical relationship with my family was absent. I refused to participate in any kind of family activity if it interfered with my drinking. My wife knew something was going on, but I tried to hide the vast extent of the problem. When she saw how much I was consuming, I would plead for her forgiveness, swearing I'd never touch a drop again, and then start up the next day. I had zero control. I was drinking myself to death."
Yeah, it's those are powerful words, and it's true. I mean, it's a lot of that is it comes up and it sort of starts some emotions. But I'll tell you, it's interesting because I was shady, I was hiding it. I was just trying to do it whenever I can. It was one of the few things in my life that I really got pretty giddy about, excited about, looked forward to. And when I stop and think about it, like most everything in my life revolved around alcohol and drinking and when we were going to drink again. It wasn't about going out to dinner with friends. It was about drinking. That was the event where for normal drinkers or people who can drink responsibly, the event is going out for dinner. But if I knew I was going to be able to have some drinks and it was with, sort of authorized drinking, then there's a good chance that I would probably pregame, right? I would have a couple of drinks beforehand because, I wasn't ever going to drink where I didn't feel it. That was sort of the intention, was to feel it. It wasn't about going out to dinner with friends. And so there was just a lot of things in my life where, we'd go out to the bar and happy hour and what started out seemed sort of harmless of a day here and a day there. It turned into 2 or 3 days a week. And all of a sudden, you really blur lines. You have these lines. You say, I'm never going to cross that line. And then all of a sudden you've crossed the line, whether it was, well, I'll never leave work early to go drink, but maybe you did leave work early to go drink, or I'll never drink during the work day. And maybe you did go have a beer and then went back to the office where you said you'd never do that. So it just, lots of things got out of control. And that's the progressive nature of it, where I think a lot of times people are not honest with themselves because they think, well, they compare out, and the alcoholic is somebody who lives under the bridge, and they look at their life and I got a great job and I make great money. And I haven't lost anything. And so in that moment, that may be true, but it could progressively get worse, and usually does get progressively worse to the point where maybe, it's unrecognizable after a while. So lots of emotions there when you talk about that. I was definitely not a great partner to Michelle and Lila. Definitely not a great dad. If I could put them off to do something for myself, it was a lot of selfish behavior, which revolved around drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm. So when you think about when you look back and when that started, it just didn't hit you like a freight train. It was a slow progression, it seemed like. And I come from a family of alcoholics. I mean, my lineage goes way back. I don't know a family member in my lineage that wasn't drug or alcohol abuser. And one thing that I picked up on in my observations was that if there wasn't something that they regretted deeply from the day before, there was no problems, right? It was only I only have a couple drinks type mentality. And, they a lot of times wouldn't, fist fight somebody or do something that would be like, obviously you shouldn't do that thing.
right.
And then just wake up the next day like there was no problem. And I it starts it seemingly that way. What was your experience with it?
Yeah. So, it did get progressively worse. And so what was happening was, as I was consuming more, I would have parts of evenings where I didn't remember details. And one I can remember specifically, a lot of Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, I'd wake up and there'd be a little bit of a cold shoulder. And I was like, hey, what's wrong? We had a great time last night. She'd say, you had a great time last night. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you wouldn't stop talking, and I'm already talkative anyway. You wouldn't stop talking. Nobody can get a word in edgewise. You think you're so funny. You just don't know when to stop. And it's interesting because I know people who drink responsibly. They might overdo it in a social environment. Their wife might give them the tap and they stop, or they might go to water. If the party was going on, if we were still socializing, I always had a drink in my hand, and I didn't put it down until the party ended. So there was never a point where I had any real, any real ability to not continue to do it in that moment. And so I would have moments of evenings where I didn't remember certain things that were occurring. And that's when I started getting kind of scared. When I would drink to the point where I didn't remember dessert. She would make some comment about dessert. I'd say, what are you talking about? I didn't remember parts of the evening. So there were parts in there where I was blacking out, and that was happening more frequently. And that's when I realized that this is really becoming a problem. A lot of people who can drink normally and who drink in social situations and are responsible with it, they don't contemplate when they're alone with their thoughts, I wonder if I have a drinking problem. If you're someone who contemplates, I wonder if I have a drinking problem, it might be an indication that maybe you do. That if you're contemplating, I wonder if I have a drinking problem, then you might.
Mm-hmm. And you got to that place when you started to realize that you weren't remembering things from the night before, where when you woke up the next day and you were sober, you started saying, okay, this mental state of mine, I'm starting to think that I might have a problem here. What was the catalyst? What was like the day where, we talk about May 4th, May 5th, that seems to be the day when you were like, not me, never again. This isn't who I am. I'm done with this.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
I remember that day like it was yesterday. Here it was 5 years ago, but I know Michelle and Lila had gone to my parents' house in Durham for my Lila's cousin's birthday party, and I had to stay behind. I had to stay behind because I was hosting for the bank I worked at. I was hosting an event, and it was a drinking event. Certainly, it was a bank event, but it was disguised as a drinking event. So I had to be there. Of course, Friday night we drank. Saturday, all day long drinking. I talked to Michelle that evening on the phone, and I was pretty slurry. I was pretty still feeling pretty good. And in that moment when I talked to her, I felt, I knew how disappointed she was in me. And she said, "Did you drive home this way?" And I said, "Yeah, no big deal, and the disappointment from her came through, and I knew right then she's gone. Like it was clear as day in that moment. She is gone. And normally on that Sunday when she came back, she would have come back at a normal time. She was much, much later coming home. She was very disappointed in me, very quiet. And I was very somber on that Sunday, May the 5th, 2019. I was reflective, and I made a decision in that moment. I'm done. I'm going to go get help. I'm going to finally go get help. And I may have said time and time again, hey, I probably need some help. But I was never really serious about it. It was almost to appease her, or just to buy time, or just to get her off my back. And so that day she came home, and I said to her that night, I said, I'm gonna get some help. And she said, I don't care what you do. She looked me right dead in the eye and said, I don't care what you do. And, it was, I deserved it. I deserved every bit of that. And I had done all the things to erode her trust, to just be shady. I was lying to her, and so I was somebody who couldn't be trusted, and I didn't love that about me. And so I kept my word. I found a counselor to talk to. I looked it up. I mean, I didn't have a referral. It was so strange how it all kind of came to play, but I just started going to counseling. And I took one small step, and it was a step of faith, but it was a small step in that moment to finally get help. And the second hour I was meeting with the counselor, she said, we can do an assessment if you want to. I mean, this is somebody I didn't know, right? This is somebody I never met. I had spent 50 minutes with her. And then the next week, I'm here for my second appointment. I roll in there, and the first thing she says is, we can do an assessment if you want to, but I'm going to just go ahead and tell you, you're an alcoholic and you don't need to drink anymore. And that might be hard for some people to hear. I was actually relieved in some way, because now I kind of knew, by somebody who had, initials after their name and was smart in this stuff. Okay, I know what I am now. All right, so now I know what I am. I don't have to think. I don't have to contemplate. I wonder if I am. Somebody's telling me this is what you are, my professional opinion, and I have all the initials after my name to prove that this is who you are. Okay, so let's get a plan now. Let's tackle this. And so we started doing it. We started putting the work in right then. We started putting the work in. And it's been an amazing, amazing journey. Somebody 5 years later that I still talk to on a regular basis.
And I'm sure that you mentioned that you had said, I'm going to get help. I think I need help. And you alluded to that time after time after time after time. I'm sure dozens, if not more times over the years. And, that May 4th phone call was the real trigger for you.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for people so they don't have to get to the May 4th phone call, so they can actually take advantage of that help that they know that they need,
Yeah. I mean,
when they realize they need it?
I think that the real reality of it is, if you've tried to stop and you sort of yo-yoed and you've stopped and started and stopped and started, never really been able to really put it down. If you know you have a problem, or you suspect you might have a problem, and you've never been able to quit on your own, it's time. Mm-hmm. It's time. It's absolutely time. And here's what I'll say about that. It's scary when you start that. It is so scary. So scary to walk in the door at Burn Boot Camp for the first time. It's scary to get help professionally. It's scary to address problems that you have. There's freedom in that. There is such freedom in that. And it's hard to say this, because people will say, yeah, but my situation is different, or, you have this going on. And I know every situation is different, but the freedom and the joy I feel today, I can't imagine life the way it used to be. I get to live this life now. I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. I love the way that I feel every day. I was in a fog, and I had no idea I had been in a fog all these years. And once I stopped drinking, and I was about 60 days, 90 days in, it was an amazing feeling of big plans are coming. I'm making big plans. I'm making big moves. I see clearly for the first time in a long time. And I can't believe I got to live this wonderful life today. So I would never have been able to do the things that I've done in the last 5 years if I was still in active addiction. No way, no chance. And I'm grateful for it not being part of my life anymore. Yeah, it's a scary thing. Mm-hmm. You're worried you're going to lose your friends. You're worried that you're going to be alone, that you're not going to have the same life that you have. It's just hard to take that first step. I know it, but if you know that you're somebody who has been struggling with this, I pray that you will take that step and get the help, because I promise you, there's a wonderful life on the other side of this.
So you're saying, if you're thinking about that you might need help, you probably need help.
Yeah. If you've been around contemplating, I wonder if I have a drinking problem for a number of years or months or whatever it is, it's time.
And so
It's time.
you just dove right in to counseling and
Yep.
AA, and then burn was a part of your journey somewhere in there. Unpack, counseling and AA and how you really got into burn, and maybe we can go into like, alcoholism is your lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
It was my father's lifestyle, his father's lifestyle, all my uncle's lifestyle. It was the lifestyle. And when you, much like my analogy to this is when I stopped playing baseball full time, I had this huge void in my heart. Like it was my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have the lifestyle anymore. And it's just like, what do I fill this big void with? And it seemed like a lot of the questions around friendship, around, is this going to be good for me? All the scary things you were mentioning, that a lot of that was fulfilled by your counselor that you grew in a great relationship with, by AA, by Burn Boot Camp. And so just tell me how this process went for you as you've gone through these 3 treatments.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would love to say that, there was a moment where I started going to counseling and, I started working out at the same exact time and, never went back. But the timeline here is that I started going to counseling and I was trying to figure out what this new world looked like. And I was very, I never could get comfortable. I'm thankful that my counselor never let me get arrogant about my sobriety or what I had accomplished. And it seemed like every time I was talking to her and I had reached some milestone, 90 days, she'd say, yeah, the next 3 months is not looking good. The probability is not good that you'll remain sober. So she always sort of moved the goalpost on me. And I'm thankful for that because she wanted me to have that mentality that you can't get too comfortable with this. It's still a long journey ahead. And, you're not, you're set, you're going to feel like you can accomplish everything and you're never going to drink again, but it's been very, very short amount of time and just stay focused on it. So for the first 7 or 8 months of going to counseling, I was still, I hadn't started burn yet. Right. So I started let me go back. I started with burn in July of 2018. Okay. So I was drinking still, but going to burn, but I wasn't drinking as much during the week because I was going to an afternoon camp. And so I started counseling in May of 2019. Okay. And what's interesting about that though is burn was already in place. This infrastructure is in place. This community was already in place. So when you take away alcohol from an alcoholic, you better give them something else. You better, because they have an addictive personality. They're gonna find something. And so burn became that new addiction for me. And boy, am I thankful that community was surrounding itself around me, that community was there, that I had that to dive into. I jumped into those workouts. Those first 7 or 8 months of working out, I was still drinking. My workouts were fine. I was getting results and I was starting to lose weight and I was starting to feel better about myself. But here's the thing, because I started kind of getting results and started feeling better about doing this, I really feel like that's what gave me the confidence to take that bigger step of going to counseling and really addressing the problem. I don't know how to say it, but like, it's just, you walk in the door at burn. Okay. But I'm still kind of drinking here. I'm like, I know I need to do something. And you're really thinking that the problem is that you're heavy or that it's health, but you don't really want to address the drinking problem because that's fun, right? I don't want to give that up. That's my blanket. That's my security blanket. But those two things can't really exist because as you get more confidence and as you feel stronger and better about yourself and continue to address the problem, then it just gives you the confidence to really, really think about what's going on in your life. And I'm grateful that burn. So I'm never bashful about this. I've said it before. I'll say it to anybody who listens to me. I'm so thankful for Burn Boot Camp and the role it played in my life because I do feel like it saved my life. I do feel, and I don't say that to be dramatic, I do feel like it saved my life because if I didn't have that infrastructure in place, I don't know that I would have been able to remain sober. Even though I was trying to be vigilant, I don't know that I would have remained sober because, I dove right into it. It was there, and I could jump right into those workouts and that community and just fell in love with it.
And when you were done drinking on May 5th, did you go to camp on May 6th? Did you go to the next week and it was like immediately right there for you to plug the void? Was there any period of time where, the next week, how did you feel after the first probably period of 7 to 10 days when you hadn't had a drink? I mean, were you miserable? Was it tolerable? Were you just so done with it that, you were sick of it? Like, tell me what was hard about quitting?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, but it was like a new page had been turned. It was a new focus, and I was already starting to go to burn. But then what happened was, once I stopped drinking, I'll tell everybody this, they've heard me say it a lot. If you know me well, the workouts took off. I mean, I got stronger. I got more disciplined, more focused, just more intense with my workouts. I poured everything I had into it. I wasn't sharing anything. It was all about burn, and it was all about just getting healthy. And it really took off. So once that was taken away out of my life, it was all about burn at that point. And I just fell in love with it. And just, there weren't days I didn't go. Like it was just it was what I did. I went every day because that's just what I do.
So your story in the burn book, we didn't have 6,000 pages to write every word of everyone's story. So in the burn book, which you could pre-order on Amazon, everybody right now, it launches June 18th. And we are so excited because Brian's story and his snapshot of his story is really in here, and some really powerful quotes that I read to you earlier. And, just hearing all of the detail behind the detail is so inspiring, for anybody that wants to make change, whether it's alcoholism or it's a relationship that you need to get out of. If you're thinking you need to get out of it, you probably do. If you're thinking that you're an alcoholic, you probably are. If you're thinking you're a drug addict, you probably are. If you or thinking you're addicted to sugar, you probably are. And there's that thought is in your head for a reason. And we hope that today, if you have that thought, if you are that closet alcoholic, like my father, who tried to hide little shooter bottles all around the place, all around the house, all around his car, peppermint schnapps bottles in the top of the cupboard when I was too short to really look up there and see them, or, I would watch him pull trash up and then smash a beer can and put it way in the bottom of the trash and then put the trash over it so nobody could see it. And, so I grew up thinking that that was a really, really bad thing. And what I get scared about, Brian, is, I drink socially, and I have no problem for 90 days, 120 days, like just without even really thinking about it, just not having a drink. I don't think about it as something that is a staple in my life. And I watched my uncles and my dad grow up, not only abusing that, but, their children and women, and, it was pretty chaotic. And so I do have this real sensitive, I have addictive personality, just like you. So I have this real acute sensitivity to it. And I don't like to drink that much. And in the last 3 years, I have taken, 120 or 90 days off toward the end of the year. And what I've noticed is that it's inspired the people around me as a leader. You inspire. I think this is a movement right now in our country. Or maybe it's just something I'm really interested in because I know that can grab me as fast as it grabbed my dad, because we have the same personality. And I want to try to always, like you do, have a healthy fear of that.
Yeah.
And I see this trend of sobriety becoming cool. I don't know if you see that trend. I'm going to ask you to elaborate on that in a minute, but stories like this make sobriety cool. It makes it desirable. It makes it an achievement to, be able to say no in the face of something that's so dangerous, so dark, could take people to like crazy dark places. And they're saying no when they could go down the street and get anything from the liquor store that they wanted. I see this wave of it. I see influencers talking about it. Non-alcoholic beer sales are going way through the roof.
Mocktails
Mocktails are going way through the roof. And I think there is a there is a energy around alcoholism that is starting to flip in society to say that, hey, maybe sobriety is the new party.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I will say that, some of the things that we've talked about in counseling is just the destructive nature of alcohol and just how, far reaching it is. One of the quotes that counselor talked about is she has so much experience with addiction from all the folks that she helps. She said that if evil had an avatar, it would be addiction.
Mm.
And it's just a powerful visual and just a powerful statement, because it is, in some ways it's socially acceptable. Everywhere you go, there's, it's very, very easy to grab. It's prevalent. People are all having a good time, but it is so destructive, and it's a slippery slope, and it's a problem, and it grabs you before you know it's a problem or before you realize what's happening to you. And then by that point, it's too late. So it's a very, very slippery slope, and it's a very scary thing to tinker with it. And I think, there's a lot of people who have abused alcohol, and a lot of people who abuse alcohol on a regular basis. I think it starts kind of in college. And I know for me, it started kind of in college and been shrinking. And then I never really put it down. Some people can put those behaviors down and they can go on to live a normal life. But I never could put it down the way that it needed to be put down. And so I really look back at my time in college and see that's where sort of the seed was planted, and it just became out of control as I moved into a professional career and, was so very social. So I hope that it is something that people are taking a serious look at. I know that, that if you address those problems, or if you just abstain from it, I know that you'll have a different outlook on life. I know that. I know that you will also, not have some of the chaos in your life that you can experience when that stuff is prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, my life became chaotic, and to the outside looking in, it looked like everything was going fine. And that's what happens a lot of times is the yard was nice and mowed, the house was painted, but inside the house was a mess, and it's just, people a lot of times they hide it away, and you think, oh, they don't have a problem, and then you become a little bit fearful that what's wrong with me, because you're being honest with yourself. I have a problem, but it's prevalent in our society, and there's a lot of people who do have a problem, and it's just very destructive.
Yeah, I know as a trainer, and you've done over 1,000 camps, I've done 15,000 or so, and I know as a trainer firsthand, we are one of the first people that somebody with an addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, food, we will be oftentimes one of the first people that they come to and that they have the conversation with. I would just notice people that this is how it would manifest inside of the gym. They would bring me their food log.
Yeah.
And their food log would be pristine. They'd do a really good job with it. But what they weren't including in their food log was alcohol, and they weren't losing the body fat. And burn isn't about body fat. We all know that. But the reason I use that as an example is because your body mass is a calculation. It is science. It's not anybody's opinion. It's calories in versus calories out. And if you expend more calories on a daily basis than you intake, then you are going to lose mass, whether it be the form of muscle or body fat, right? I would have members sit down with me, and they would tell me that their food log was pristine. And I'm like, but why aren't you making progress then? And then I won't say the name out of respect because I don't have clearance to share the name, but there was a situation where I had one lady who, she broke down, like hardcore breakdown, in just a regular run-of-the-mill focus meeting. We were going through her food log, and I just said, listen, I know that you are not being fully honest with me because I know the calculations, I know the science, I got all the letters behind my name too, to know all the things. And I know that you are leaving something out of this equation. I didn't know it was alcohol. I could have just been that she wouldn't. I was like, what are we being dishonest about? Why isn't 1+1 mathing right
Yeah.
now? And I remember in the moment she broke down and she said, Devan, I go into my bathroom every night and I have 5 or 6 shooters, and I put the shooters in the little thing and I tie up the bathroom trash, and I take the bathroom trash out to the dumpster trash, and I make sure that, and then I replace the bag, and that's my nightly routine. And I get drunk every single night and nobody knows about it but me.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it but me. And that was the part to me that gave me chills. And she's, obviously took a long time to get that out. And so I want to ask you, based on your experience in AA, based on your experience in counseling, based on your experience in Burn Boot Camp, how are people, as you've been sharing your story and you've been vulnerable to share your story and to really inspire people, has there been anybody that has listened to your story and said, you know what, Brian, like, you've inspired me to stop as well. You've inspired me to stop drinking, whether it's a Burn member or somebody else? Who are the people in your life that are now looking up to you to be sober? Because I'm sure that that's happening. And also, if you're teaching other people how to do something, that's the next layer. And that's where mastery really comes in, where, you've got 1,800 plus days in a row. I would say, although you have a healthy fear of it, you still, you're 5 years into this and you're not going backward now. So who are those people in your life? Who have you specifically helped? And maybe you could just share a little bit about their story, if there is one that comes to mind, or if not, you could maybe elaborate on wherever your mind goes.
Yeah, it's when I started thinking about Burn Boot Camp and helping people, that my past problems and how I've been able to address that, and how I felt, sort of was a springboard in becoming a franchise partner and wanting to help people in a meaningful way. I grew up in a Christian home, and my parents were, great, and they didn't drink. My grandfather was alcoholic, and my mom was so fearful of it. She was so fearful of alcohol. It was, that was one of the things that she always said was, out of all the things, it's just, please don't drink. And it's so ironic because, out of all the things that she didn't want me to do, that was the one thing that I made sure I did, right? And just really took off with it. So I was, I was the prodigal son, right? I grew up had this faith background, grew up in this Christian home, and then went off to college and just went wild. And for a long part of my life, was away from that. So the one thing I'm so thankful of is the role that God played in my life in overcoming this. And one of the things that I find interesting is I'm a talkative person, but this is not something that a lot of people who have a problem are willing to share openly. God has given me this ability to share my story without any shame or guilt. And I'm so thankful for that. So it will come up in normal conversation in the gym with members. And they see me, they know that I had some pretty substantial weight loss, and my transformation on when you see a picture of then and now, it looks like it was just weight loss, but there's more to my story. And I share that story. I've had people in tears. I've had people say, I'm 170 days sober. I had, this one lady recently, we had a conversation. She decided to stop drinking and she's 170 days sober, and she posted it, and I asked her about it. And she was taking care of a friend who had cirrhosis, and she watched this person who had this long history of alcohol addiction finally, just take her out. And she said, when she was watching this and she was a big part of her life, she said, I'm done. And I wanted to make sure that she knew that I understood that. And I said to her, I'm so proud of that step you took. If you need anything from me, if you just need to talk about it, just let me know. Because I know that there's going to be days ahead for all of us who walk away from this where things trigger. Whether it's you're on a cruise or whether you're finding yourself eating dinner and you're at a bar, and maybe it was a bar that you used to go to, and you might need somebody to just, hey, I'm struggling. I want to be that person. The relationship as a trainer and as an owner that we share with our members is intimate in a lot of ways with what they share with us. And it's a big responsibility. It's a great responsibility. I'm thankful for that. And I think that's, that God put me in that position to be able to help folks. If someone hears this and they go get help, it was worth it. My story and what I was able to overcome, if it gave somebody the courage to take that step of faith, then I'm thankful for that.
Wow, that's just such a powerful sentiment, that people around you're responsible for hundreds and hundreds of families, and they really lean on you, not only as their trainer, but as the owner of the place that has become their sanctuary. And I want to ask you, because we're here in DC and we just ran the National Mall event today. We had around 1,000 members from 28 locations come out to this event, and you came into the event. You're quite a ways from here, so didn't have like a big caravan of people, but we were going to do a podcast, and so you came for the event and for the podcast, and you were telling me that you sat at a bar last night by yourself, and I was wondering, as you were saying that, like, man, what a brave dude. Cause he's like, you're putting yourself in the fire. Was that an intentional thing that you do? Do you go do that on purpose? How much of that is a strategy?
Yeah, no, I never tinker with it from that perspective. I got in kind of late last night and it was past dinner, but I needed to eat dinner. And I walked to a restaurant and, by myself, I didn't want to take up a table. I feel comfortable now sitting at a bar and having a meal, but I don't try to tempt myself with it, right? But I do feel comfortable at this point in my sobriety that I can do that and never feel tempted. But it was not something that I was doing early on when I was very, immature in my sobriety or very few days of sobriety. That was not something that I was going to tempt myself. I'll tell you a quick story. There was a time about maybe 2 years ago that Michelle was going to be out of town, and there's a restaurant that I like in our town that she doesn't care for that much, but I love it. And so she was going to be out of town, and I had made plans. I was going to go, I'm going to go have to this restaurant that I love. It happened to be the last place that I had a beer.
Mm-hmm.
So
on May 4th.
It was the last place. So I had drank that day and gone and then driven later on. This is how bad it was. After talking to Michelle that night, I still got in the car and drove and had dinner and had a couple more beers. And that was the last place that I had a beer. And so I was telling my counselor that, that this is what's going on in my life. And she stopped me dead cold and said, don't go there. She said, you don't need to go there. And I had not contemplated that I couldn't handle that. I'd been sober for 2.5 or 3 years and felt very comfortable. She said, don't go there. And, I didn't, it was interesting because I had not contemplated and that's that cunning, that subtle, it kind of creeps in and all of a sudden, could that have been what triggered? Well, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth taking that chance. So definitely as I'm talking to people, my counselor played a big role in some of the things that we were talking about and strategies. That was one strategy. And even though I had been 2.5 years, she saw that it could potentially be an issue. And glad she had the faith in the courage to say, hey, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it.
And you listened.
And I was obedient. I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. You might be right. Why bother? And why do that? Why take that chance?
So clearly, burn has been a big part of this for you, but your story, is the story of Brian Woodell, right? Yeah. Which starts when you were born and is continuing on to today and through today. Burn has clearly been a huge part of that. And when you decided to become a franchise partner, I remember the moment that I met you, you told me this story. You told me, it wasn't as elaborate and we didn't have enough time to go this deep on it, but you said, hey, listen, Burn saved my life. This is the first thing you told me. Burn saved my life. I was an alcoholic and I'm not anymore. And I want to become a franchise partner because this is the next step for me in my journey. And so I was wondering if you could elaborate on, maybe zoom me into the moment when, things are going really well for you. Your sobriety is going really well. Your fitness is going well. You mentioned you started crushing workouts. When was the moment that you decided that Burn Boot Camp was something that was bigger than fitness, that it was bigger than your own journey, that you needed this pull to help people do something similar to what you've did with whatever their struggle is, helping them overcome their struggle, get to desire? What was the moment? Zoom me in. Tell me the story about when you made the decision to become a franchise partner with us.
Yeah, it's so funny because I had not thought about that. I had not thought about that in a while, and so what happened was I was in counseling, and we were making nice headway, and just on a weekly basis going in there and talking through issues. And little by little, I had become more and more passionate about fitness and helping people. And, everywhere I was talking, at my job, and people knew I worked out, and I was going on and on about Burn Boot Camp and how much I loved it and how much I love fitness. And, one time I was talking to my manager, and she said, you've really become really passionate about fitness. And I was like, I have, and I lit up, I was lighting up, and I realized that I wasn't lighting up the same way that I was in my career that I was currently in. So as that was happening, my counselor and I were talking about, this realization of how fitness was playing a role in my life and how passionate I was about it. And here I was talking about helping people and, helping myself and then helping other people and telling the story and sharing it with people. I was sharing it with coworkers. I was sharing it with whoever in the moment where it was needed. And I remember one day we were talking just in a normal session, and she posed this question to me. She said, if money were no object, you could do anything with your life, what would you do? And without any hesitation, I said, I'd open up a Burn Boot Camp. Mm-hmm. And, I just said it without any, it was almost like a reaction. And it was the start of, that journey. Things started falling in place. I reached out and talked to somebody in franchise development, had that initial conversation about what it would look like. That conversation went really well, and the next thing started happening. It just sort of snowballed from there. And I said, I'm really doing this. This is the time in my life. I was at a certain age where I was like, if I'm going to take a shot, I'm taking a shot right now. This is the time. I'm never going back to that lifestyle. This is what I'm going to do. And I was comfortable in my career, and I thought, well, if I make a mess of this, if it's a total disaster, then whatever. But I never in my heart believed that was how it was going to go. I knew in my heart there was like a calmness, a stillness, that I felt called to do this. I felt called to be a Burn Boot Camp franchise partner and to open a gym and have a place that was truly a place where people could come in, and it was more than a gym, right? We always say it's more than a gym. You can do a push-up or a burpee anywhere. You can do it in a parking lot, right?
Yeah, you can do it for free.
Right. So, but what is it about Burn that's different? It's that community, and I have this amazing reverence and respect for the brand because of what it did for me. It's a personal story, and because when you have that personal story, then you're able to share that in a real way. And people, when they hear you being real and passionate, it's not sales. They want to be part of that. They're drawn to that. They want to be there. And I think, I'm a hands-on franchise partner. I'm in the gym most every single day. I know every member by name. I'm proud of that. I have a relationship with these folks. I love them. And I want to see them win. I want to see everybody win in life. Nothing makes me happier than getting a front row seat to watch people crush it and win.
Yeah. And you told me the very first day that we met, you said, I'm going to do this. You told me those same things. I remember the same conviction. I don't remember the exact words, but I remember the same conviction. Like, I'm doing this and I'm going to change the community and I'm going to be there every day. You're saying all the same things. And it's, for me, I'm extremely honored to be able to have somebody like you in the organization who is vulnerable and will share their story. This is real life stuff, man.
Yeah.
This isn't any BS. Like,
No.
we're not trying to have a conversation to do anything other than to bring awareness to this, to addiction of alcohol, and to give some strategies and some ideas and some nuggets for people if they're out there and they're in that position. And so, I've seen you share your story in various platforms and in various different ways. And it's really inspiring for sure.
Yeah. Think about over 100,000 members, there's people all over Burn Nation in all these locations. And there's little pockets of people in every single location that have an issue. And this is going to go out and people can hear this and they can act on this. This is a call to action. If you're somebody who is struggling with it, it's time. Mm-hmm. Now is the time to take that action. Let's do it for real. Let's get to it, right?
And that is the most serious call to action I think we could talk about. And I mean, all of the tragedy of the organization, if and when there is with that many people, of course, you're going to have tragic situations. And that all rolls up to me. And I find out about all the great things, but I also find out about the member who overdosed and passed away.
Right.
I also find out about somebody that got too drunk, threw up in their sleep, and choked on their own vomit.
Right.
Like, I've heard all of these stories. This is such a real thing. And back to the closet alcoholic thing, there are far more people than anybody realizes right now today, people in your life that are around you that are acting in that way or close to that way. And they need help, and they, whenever they're ready for help, they'll get it. Right. And you probably know that better than anybody else, it seems.
Well, I mean, I think one thing too is be vulnerable and share that, if you're struggling with something, you have people in your gym that you're close to. I think about Burn Boot Camp, and one of the things that we always say is different about Burn is its community. And there's countless stories of people who walked in the gym, didn't know anybody, and 6 months later, they're going to coffee on Friday mornings after camp, and they're going to their kids' birthday parties, right? They have become friends. So they have this community. Be vulnerable, share what your struggles are. You've got people that will absolutely be there for you. They're there for you in camp, high-fiving you, encouraging you. Why wouldn't they be there for you when it really matters? And something that you may be struggling with, so I know it's hard to be vulnerable. I know it's scary to put yourself out there and to share certain details, but there's healing in that. And, people who really care about you and love on you want to see you win. They want to be there to encourage you. They want to be there to help you. Ask for the help and get help.
So, I know Burn's important in your life, but family is obviously the most important thing. And, being a father and, your daughter is a part of all this story. She's a part of the journey, and you embrace that. How has this helped your relationship with your daughter, and what are the conversations like nowadays, and how do you use your journey to help the most important person in your life, your daughter?
Yeah. I mean, look, I have a teenage daughter, and she's now, 16, very, very soon 17. So sometimes the conversations don't always happen as frequently as I like, because most people who have kids that age will probably understand this, that they put their AirPods in and and they do their thing.
That's what I got to look forward to.
Right. Yeah. Of course. But when I do get a chance, right. Well, the first thing I would say is, if you ask her, she knows that we're not fighting about it anymore. You know, if Michelle and I have something that we don't agree on in the house, it's never about alcohol anymore, and I'm thankful for that. You know, it was so frequent. It seemed like every time we had a disagreement and it was some big blowouts, it was always about alcohol and how I had messed up again, right? And maybe I had said I wasn't going to do it. And you know, an alcoholic, when they say they're not going to do something, they in every part of their being, they mean that. They are done, right? They're gonna, and then they don't have the ability though. And if they don't dress it, they don't have the ability to keep their word in that. It's a sickness. And then because they didn't keep their word, then they feel shame and guilt, and then it's just a downward spiral. So we're not fighting about that. She notices that, and she's thankful that. And you know, there was a point where when we were fighting about it so much, I remember her saying, "Daddy, you know, please stop drinking." You know, and I always felt like, you know, the alcoholic mind would be like, my wife put her up to that. She was trying to get me to stop. So that's not true. She was very observant, and she knew exactly what was happening. She saw me acting differently when I drank too much, or, you know, being silly or whatever it was. And so, you know, my conversation with her, I think because it was a part of our life, a big part of our life, I hope that she, you know, my prayer for her would be that she doesn't touch it, right? That she saw it, sort of like my mom with my grandfather. She wanted no part of it. I hope that that's what happens with Lila. I hope that she says, "That's not for me. You know, he made a mess of things. I don't want to be a part of that." But if she does go down that route, and you know, then I want her to know that she can come to me with any of those questions. I'll be real with her. She might try it, and maybe she'll, you know, I want her to know that she has somebody in her corner that supports her, that wants to help her, that will be willing to talk about it, whatever it looks like. And I hope she's not going to be, you know, I hope she doesn't do it, but I understand, like, I don't have my head in the sand. I know kids maybe have to go through that rite of passage, but I hope she doesn't want to do it. I hope that she says, "Nah, no, it's just not for me. It's not part, you know, I saw my dad go through this. He was miserable when he was doing it. I don't want any part of that."
It's just so good, man. It is so good. And I really appreciate you meeting me here in Arlington Burn Boot Camp Gym to really discuss your story. You're featured in the book alongside 12 exclusive workouts, 50 recipes that people can make in 10 minutes or less. Your story is a big part of the very first strategy called the burn strategy. And we put your story in the part about fitness because fitness was such a huge part of this for you.
Yeah.
And you know, you ultimately, you know, filled the void that alcohol can leave with burn in the gym. And, you know, you always had something to plug that gap. And so I'm just honored that you would share your story in the book. I hope you're ready to go on the PR circuit with me and talk about this a lot more, because this drops June 18th this summer. And we're trying to sell everybody 23,000 copies. That is our goal. 23,000 copies. We're trying to make the New York Times bestseller list. Brian's story is definitely going to help us. Your pre-order on Amazon is definitely going to help us do that. But Burn Nation, when we got a big goal, we go out and we make it happen. We got to share Brian's story and the other 13 stories in this book with as many people as we can. For there's stories of cancer survivors, to overcoming alcoholism, to dramatic, extreme obesity and having a weight loss transformation and journey, and people from all walks of life with all types of struggles, Brian. So kind of in the abstract, before we wrap up here, you know, what do you want to leave people with? What is your, you know, at Burn, we do finishers, and then we do a little cool down and promo where, you know, Brian and I give everyone a little nugget of inspiration to take with them for their day. So I just want to give you a couple minutes here at the end of the podcast to do that.
Yeah. I'm thankful that you're doing the podcast. I'm thankful for the opportunity to share my story. I'm thankful for the platform. I don't ever want to race past that and how important it is to have a platform, and then what you do with it, right? So I'm thankful that God's given me the ability to share it without any shame or guilt, and to have a platform to do that. What I will say is, whatever you're going through, right? It's not too big, right? God can handle it. I would say go to prayer. And then I'd say take that first step. You took that first step to walk in the door at Burn Boot Camp, and it was scary. And if you're somebody who did that, and here you are 6 months later, a year later, you're like, I love Burn Boot Camp. It's the most amazing thing. I look at the similarities in taking that first step and wanting to create a better life, 1% better every day. It starts with that one step of faith, that one courageous step. It's a big step, but it's a step of faith, and it's a courageous step. So whatever it is, you got this. And you got people around you that are want to rally around you, and they want to help you.
So that little step obviously compounds when you take a little step each day. And so now you're on the other side of the challenge. And there's still, obviously, we know the healthy fear in the notes that you'll continue to take. And I look forward to seeing that over the next 5 years of our relationship. And so where's Brian going from here? What does it look like in your world to have a clear outlook, a clear vision of the future without the fog, without the threat of alcoholism creeping back into your life? What's the future look like for you, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, let's just keep doing it, right? Let's just keep knocking it out of the park. Let's just keep changing lives, saving lives. We have a big responsibility, and just be there for people when meet them where they're at. Whatever they're going through, you be there, you be obedient and available to meet them where they're at, and let's wrap our arms around them, love on them, encourage them. We'll get through it together.
Brian Woodell, thank you, man. Thank you so much, everybody.
Honor.
Thank you for listening. If you guys want to go visit Brian's gym in North Suffolk, you can go do that. Take a camp with him. He'll be happy to lay one down for you. Listen, I'm so thankful that you're here. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're at the Burn Boot Camp podcast. Go order Burn, the 5-step strategy for inner and outer strength, on Amazon. Pre-order drops June 18th. Again, written by Morgan and myself, but really on behalf of Burn Nation. We are so excited to be able to take this publication and to use it as a tool, another tool in the Burn Boot Camp ecosystem to change people's lives. And thank you all for following along. Make sure you go and review this on Apple Podcasts. We love your reviews. We need your reviews. Brian wants to see your reviews too, okay? And he wants to know how your story helped him and how you were inspired by it. So please mention Brian in your reviews, and one thing about this podcast that really stuck with you, a golden nugget, so that we can keep getting better for you guys. Brian Woodell, thank you, my friend. Burn Boot Camp. We're going to do it like we always do. 2 claps on 2, 1, 2.